but I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you.
Hey everybody, very quick disclaimer. This was a very difficult video to make because I do not want to exploit the situation revolving around the plane crash in Washington, D.C. The point of this video, though, is to talk about the narratives on the left-leaning media and the right-leaning media as far as this plane crash, the DEI narratives, and so on. So, please, before we start this video, like this video. It helps out so much, and it's free. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
A week before I entered office, they put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program.
Now look, many of you are aware the position that Donald Trump holds, and as I make this video, he signed an executive order to get rid of all of this, is that DEI is hurting the FAA and other government entities that are very high risk. I want you guys to pay attention to the banner on the bottom of the screen that CNN put up.
The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite.
And yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people. You mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference? They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you.
Okay, so you are aware that was a CNN news anchor. I will leave it at that. You guys can form your opinions as far as how CNN is reporting this story, because here is how they responded to this situation.
The chair of the National Transportation Safety Board, Jennifer Homendy, who was sitting right there in those chairs, or the new acting FAA administrator who has been named presumably in the last few hours, because before that there had been no administrator at the FAA in this position. The person who was in that position before left before Trump took office, and right now the head of the FAA is vacant, the deputy head of the FAA is vacant, the head of the TSA is vacant, and the deputy head of the TSA is also vacant. And so all of these questions about staffing and what could have played a factor here is very much still under investigation.
Now, here's why I make these videos. You're going to see how you have a 50-50 split as far as the narratives go. Donald Trump will blame the DEIs and the lack of efficiency in the FAA, and then you will have CNN say, well, you have the lack of administrators and directors in these positions. I will let the clip speak for itself.
The press conference for a second, because it is just so soon, way too soon, to make any sort of indictment or insinuation that air traffic control was to blame here, that hiring policies were to blame here, that the pilots of the Black Hawk were to blame here. This is something that investigators will have to go through, not only on the scene, and they are there now doing the Lord's work. It is hard to do, but they will have to do this for months and years after this. There will be hearings. There will be lots of questions to be asked. This is only the precipice. And so
now, here's where things get interesting, and this is why this current discussion is happening. This same news anchor is yelling at Donald Trump about blaming Democrats and the DEI hires. However, just a couple of minutes later in this same news segment, this same news anchor will also have the same issues.
The facts are this. The policies have changed at the FAA, and they were doing more off-the-street hires starting back in the Obama administration.
What does that mean?
Meaning hiring people not from the traditional pipeline of going to air traffic control, schools, academies, going to colleges that specialize in that hiring people from the street, taking them to the FAA Academy, and then putting them into facilities across the country. The bottom line is this. The air traffic control system in the United States is facing an incredible shortage of controllers. And that is something that the Biden administration, to their credit, really tried to shore up. They hired
So we are currently at a standstill because Donald Trump is absolutely correct. You do have a lot of DEI hires and you do have a lot of deficiencies and inadequate positions filled in the FAA. And CNN is also correct where these issues have been happening since the Obama era. And Joe Biden did address this, but he has been so swamped during his presidency, I don't know what actually got done. So let's continue this video.
Signature, we have a presidential memorandum titled Immediate Assessment of Aviation Safety. In light of the damage done to aviation safety by the Biden administration's DEI and woke policies, what this presidential memorandum orders is for your Secretary of Transportation and FAA administrator, in this case, acting FAA administrator, to basically ensure that we are actively undoing all of that damage, that we are assessing how much damage was done, and that we're ensuring that people hired within the FAA, in keeping with your memorandum of January 21st, are only the most outstanding, capable people for the jobs that they're being hired into.
Okay, so it is official. Donald Trump does want to look into the deficiencies and whether or not DEI is to blame in the FAA and aviation in general. Of course, CNN has something to say about this.
Are DEI policies at the FAA to blame?
I put my head in my hands, Pam, when the president said that. This is something that has been pushed by the far right for a few months now, that DEI policies are to blame in a degradation of safety in aviation in the United States. But frankly, the president is getting out ahead of his skis here. What he has said is not only unprofessional, unpresidential, inconsiderate of the status of this investigation, but frankly, it is just unhinged. That he could even say with any sort of certainty that diversity, equity, and inclusion policies had any part to play in this accident. Remember that.
Now, there are a lot of assertions going on and a lot of pointing the fingers, but I cannot find evidence that Donald Trump straight up said the reason why this particular accident happened is because of DEI. The argument that Donald Trump is saying is that DEI is affecting the quality of FAA, not specifically this and not the specific tower who is monitoring the situation.
He is saying with a lot of certainty that the blame is on DEI and the blame is in some ways on air traffic control and air traffic controller hiring. I have to feel for the air traffic controllers in the tower at Reagan National Airport who had to essentially sit there helplessly and make the call to first responders to say we have a serious aircraft crash at 8:48 last night.
Now, I haven't talked too much about the families in this video for obvious reasons. Like I said at the very beginning, I don't want to exploit the family members. However, there was an interesting article and interview from Fox News talking about how almost every single air disaster or crash has resulted in some sort of litigation. So make sure you guys are paying attention to what these families might end up suing for. They could sue for the fact that there is no current FAA administrator or somebody who's in charge of the FAA and other high positions where there's nobody filling in the gaps. So as this investigation continues, we might see some litigation in the near future.
Now, it may or may not have had to do, but I don't like the fact that the helicopter was at the exact same level as the airplane. The helicopter should have been 1,000 feet or 500 feet above it or something below it.
Now, I'm not going to play you guys any videos of the crash. You can go look it up yourself. But as I make this video, Donald Trump did just post on social media the helicopter was 200 feet above the legal distance they were allowed to be flying. And if you go look at the footage, it's true. The helicopter is literally perfectly in line with the jet coming into land, while the helicopter was, I guess, supposed to be lower, according to the experts. So Donald Trump was actually correct during these news briefings that why is the helicopter in line with that jet?
A real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of shit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it. 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity.
One thing I will say, as somebody who gathers clips all the time for you guys to watch and enjoy, Donald Trump only curses privately, like on a podcast or somewhere else. He never curses live on TV in the presidential role. So when Donald Trump is cursing live on TV, you know he's very upset and he wants to get the job done. This is a very impactful moment in American history, and it's a very devastating one as well. It affects everybody when you see this because we all travel via air and we expect the airways to be safe.
There was a day-long safety stand-down because of the rise of near collisions on the runways at commercial airports nationwide that really took off in 2023. I did a sit-down interview with Buttigieg. He was well-versed on the topic. He knew the points. He knew where the blind spots were, and the FAA and the Department of Transportation from the top down of the Biden administration was taking that problem very seriously. He also was incredibly hard on airlines and consumer protections. The big bottom line here is that there are so many vacancies in the federal government when it comes to aviation safety.
I really try not to take clips out of context and form my own narratives in these channels, but that particular news anchor, for every single time he hates on Donald Trump, I don't think he realizes he's actually agreeing with Donald Trump as well. Because, look, Donald Trump doesn't like Pete Buttigieg. He says things in a very harsh way towards him. But this news anchor says, look, Pete did a good job, but there were also a lot of deficiencies. There's a lot of gaps in the hiring. And again, indirectly, Donald and this news anchor, they're both agreeing with one another. I would love to see Donald Trump and this guy actually have a discussion as far as their disagreements.
I have a plan to visit, not the site, because you tell me, what's the site? The water?
Or to meet with the first responders down there?
I don't have a plan to do that, but I will be meeting with some people that were very badly hurt with their family member, obviously, but I'll be meeting with some of the families, yeah.
They blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have.
Now, something else I want to point out is that Donald Trump just says DEI, and then you have reporters saying, well, what's the problem with diversity? And then Donald Trump will counter and say, well, we want more competent people. You can see how it's very easy to twist Donald Trump's words, or anybody who is not for the DEI hires. You can say, well, that means you're not for diversity, and then you can make your own conclusions from there. And that to me seems to be the wording and division amongst the American people. As far as this particular topic and debate, you have entire news networks saying, as you can see, Donald Trump is not for diversity. Then you have other news networks saying, as you can see, Donald Trump wants the best people for the job. And then you have people in the middle who are trying to decipher the information as we're trying to live our lives daily and trying to support our families. This is why this particular topic and subject can be very dangerous depending on what narrative you're following and not seeing the full picture. And by the way, a lot of right-leaning correspondents are not happy with Donald Trump just using a blanket statement as DEI and other people in his administration. That is why there seems to be a lot more clarity, even from J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, saying, look, we are for diversity, but we just need the highest quality of person in these very high-risk situations.
Put into office, he showed up with one message: it's DEI's fault. Then Hegseth says DEI, then Duffy says DEI, and then J.D. Vance, maybe playing a little bit of cleanup, says, well, if it wasn't DEI in terms of the pilots it's very stressful to work with people when we have these kinds of DEI policies. DEI is not a scapegoat for everything. It is, I get it, for some voters, it's what they want to hear about. But you should...
And again, that was from Fox News. I think a lot of us do agree that you cannot use DEI for every single thing that goes wrong in your life. But I do want to point out, outside of this story, there seems to be a lot of companies like Walmart, major corporations, McDonald's, who are getting rid of DEI. I don't know if in the near future we will actually have a way to quantify, meaning statistically or mathematically have the facts if DEI are ruining corporations or making things not as efficient. I don't know if we could actually find that out, but I do question, and I think a lot of us also question, if DEI is not an issue, why did all of these organizations get rid of it? Now, the counter argument is always going to be, well, it's to save money and it's to hire, certain kind of people. I will let you guys decide. I just wanted to show you guys the entire picture. And I will say, look, I do have an inherent bias. I am a conservative Christian. And again, I do lean more right. However, I'm trying to make sure I am showing you guys the full picture. Thank you guys for everything. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you guys later.